Have you ever asked yourself, how do I eat to feel energized? How do I lose fat without excessive dieting or cardio? Is it possible to be healthy if I'm always traveling for work? Or how can I enjoy my current lifestyle but get in better shape? Wits and Weights is a podcast for working professionals with busy lives who want to get stronger, build a healthier, leaner physique, feel energized, and project greater confidence in their career and relationships. Hosted by Philip Pape, Wits and Weights examines the evidence and turns those into specific actions to implement so you can perform better in the gym, at work, and in life. Also, you can cut through the noise of the fitness industry to make smart, high-impact decisions for your personal wellness and physical self-mastery. Download Wits and Weights using your favorite podcast app or at witsandweights.com/podcast and get your free protein power transformation program at witsandweights.com. This is a 14-day habit transformation to help fix your nutrition and get more protein. Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is entrepreneur and Abraham Hicks fan, Louis D'Souza. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. Anne-Marie is not feeling up to snuff today, so she won't be joining us this week, but of course she'll be back as soon as she can next week. In the meantime, though, my friend Louis is drinking up and getting ready to go here, and he pointed something out as we were getting to know our guest before the show today, that it's been 5 years we've been doing the show. And after you said that, I said, wow, it really has been 5 years. I mean, that's a while. That's like half the time I'm doing the podcast. You know, that's a while. I mean,
definitely.
5 years.
Probably your longest co-host.
Is it longest? No, not quite. Although you're closing in the longest. You're very close to being the longest one. Cindy Chavez was with me for 6 years. Mm-hmm. So, but you're closing in on that one because she stopped doing the show in February. But and she may actually be back at some point. She gave me a hint this summer she might be. Yeah.
All right. Cool.
So how are things in the UK?
I don't know.
I mean, we know about the news the funeral. Yeah, I mean, we all know Queen Elizabeth passing and the passing of the torch to King Charles. I'm still getting used to saying that. I imagine many Brits are getting used to saying that as well. But yeah, that's the big news over there. How about in your life, though? I mean, you always have like really fun stuff going on in your life. Is there going to be let's put it this way: is there going to be a sauna story today?
Well, I was trying to join the naturist group.
Oh, right. Yeah. What was happening?
Yeah, well, I'm now in. So
you made it. Oh, congratulations.
I made it in. Passed all the scrutiny.
Yes. Well,
which is good. I'm glad they do scrutinize quite heavily for that. And
sure.
I got stories about that if you want.
Okay. All right. Well, then we'll dig right into that. First, let's bring our guest in for today. Her name is Rachel Oz, and she is the author of a soon-to-be-released book titled The Relationship Book. Very simple title. The subtitle is a little bit longer, but the title itself is a really short book. So, Rachel, thank you for joining us on the show, and you promised before we got started that you would do the subtitle, so I'm going to leave that to you. What's the subtitle of the book?
All right. The subtitle is... So it's a relationship book, a soulful, transformational, and artistic inventory of your connective life.
All right. I'm glad I left that one to you.
Yes, that's right. Yes. So basically, it's a fully colorful illustrated book by me that outlines all kinds of different relationships and really taking the time to take care of yourself through them. Whether it's your relationship with yourself, with animals, humans, community, clothing, food, etc.
When you say illustrated, did you actually do illustrations for your book?
I did, yeah.
You did?
Yeah. When I was, I don't know if you guys remember this, but I do remember being so sad at a certain point in my youth when the picture books turned into chapter books for
Yes.
school. And I was like, where's all the pictures? So I remember grieving that and
Oh yeah.
protesting it. And so I've brought them back for adults.
I love that. And in all of
Yeah.
your promotional work too, you wear bright colors, which
I
I like,
do.
especially these days
Oh,
where the styles are all black, white, and red. That's about
yeah.
it. Maybe a
Yeah.
couple of other mauves in there or something like that. But it's like,
Yeah.
it's like the era of brilliant colors is another era that needs to come back at some point because that's usually what happens.
Yes.
But I love that. I
Yes.
love those photos that you have.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I think at the least for a lot of baby boomers, we had a lot more technicolor and groovy images, just, lots and lots of bubbles of colors,
I'll tell you something else too. This is something my wife
Yeah.
pointed out to me a few times, starting very early on in our relationship, which
Hmm.
started in just at the end of the 1990s. Um, her theory is that we suffered a tremendous loss during the AIDS epidemic because so many of the best designers were gay.
Hmm.
And there's some truth to
Mm.
that. There's some truth to that.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
I look at the styles,
Oh.
particularly of the last 10 to 20 years, they're almost depressing in terms of their color usage.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah,
So, yeah, I'm sure your wife is onto something.
I think she is.
Yeah,
She usually
yeah.
is. Yeah,
Yeah, she usually is. Yes, yes.
she is. I'm
And
telling you.
yeah, I believe you. And I think the other huge role model for us about color and wearing it is nature. When we look at animals and the natural world, it's it's all around us,
Absolutely. Yeah,
Animals and trees and mountains, they know how to dress up.
they do. And beautifully, I
Yeah.
might add. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Especially where we live here in New England because this is a
Mm.
very green part of the country.
Okay.
And so, and now we're approaching the multicolored time of year because, the leaf peepers will be joining us for a time, starting in about,
Mm.
I would say about 2 weeks is when we're going to start reaching the peak of color. So yeah,
Okay.
that's
Oh,
when nature just kind of puts on a show here in the
that's
Northeast.
right.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah, her own fireworks.
it really does.
Just the other thing I'll say about color, if I could, is that because I'm a psychologist, I just want to acknowledge that there's also all kinds of research about the effects of various colors on us.
Right?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
so that's its own rabbit hole to go down and talk about, why some gyms have certain colors in them on the walls because they're energizing colors or, the different colors have different effects.
I mean, we talk a lot here on the program about how important it is to go within and develop that inner relationship, and that's all very true. But nevertheless, we live in a physical world and we take a lot of our cues from outside. And as long
Right.
as that's going to be the case, then I really think it's vitally important that we
Yeah.
have, to use the term you just used, a multi-technical or technicolor world. I mean,
Yes.
because that's where we feel the most joyous. That's where
Yes.
color is one of our best ways of expressing joy, I think,
I
without
do
even realizing we're doing it.
too.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Preach, Walt.
Well, I try not to do that, but
Yeah. In the most fun way.
right.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm with you also about the inner stuff and the inner joy. And I just, whatever helps sort of create this relationship with joy, which as you're mentioning, we're in a physical world, we're physical beings as well. And so
Mhm.
I think all that helps us to bridge to joy outside of us, inside of us, and integrating all that. It's just all there for the taking.
Totally agree. So give us a little bit
Hmm.
of give us like the 2-minute potted biography of Rachel Oz. Tell us about yourself.
Oh, okay. Thank you for asking. Um, Biography of me. So, as I mentioned, I'm a psychologist and I see mostly adults, some adolescents, but mostly adults. And my favorite thing is to really look for with people what is most sort of beautiful and whole and true inside. And a lot of my books, this will be my fourth one, but a lot of my books and illustrations are all about the nuggets that come from people and the beauty that we have inside, and especially out of some of our pain and suffering, that is often where wisdom springs out of those learnings and walking through in an awake way to our lives. So I love all of that. I love loving people. I love writing and colors and the natural world, bunnies and deer, and it amazes me that we have it when I'm reminded, like, how do we have giraffes walking around? Like, that's amazing. And that we're in this like little world spinning around in the universe, that you even have stars behind you, the whole like sky, and that's amazing. So I love to be amazed, and then I get tired, and then I need to nap.
Okay.
Right? Because it's a lot to take in. And I think there's something for me, I'm in my 50s. I think there's something for me generally about that. While I am growing older, I also am simultaneously growing younger. That I wish to integrate all of me, the wise child who knew things, and, she knew what she wanted to wear. She knew who she loved, or was less, what she liked to do, and just saying the pure words and pursuing what brings joy,
Yeah.
So that would be, maybe that was more than 2 minutes, but a little soundbite.
Well, there's one more I need to bring in, because you used a really interesting term in your profile. You describe yourself as an art playgroundist.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for catching that, Walt. And for anyone listening, for me, it's a made up term, art playgroundist. Because for me, being creative, for me, it's art. For someone else, it may be something else, right? Writing or whatever it is you're pursuing, maybe enjoy. But when I make art, it feels like I'm a kid again in a playground on the swings, or, running across the field with my friends. And so it's just that pursuit of, in a deep way, the playground. Okay. I don't know if anyone listening, or for you guys when you were little, if anyone asked you what your favorite subject is in school. And I think for a lot of kids, they'll say recess, or,
yeah.
Right. And maybe there's a piece of permission there of how do I live life like recess, in a profound, meaningful, purposeful, joyful, real way.
I love that. Well, I'll even pile on a little bit about that.
Great. Pile on.
Because I personally, I have been an advocate of alternative education for most of my adult life. I actually helped to found an alternative school, so that'll give you an idea. I have a strong orientation that way. One of the things that I really believe in very strongly, and I think Louie will probably echo this, is that I believe the most important thing for any child to learn is socialization and social interaction. It's the one thing that the traditional school system lacks the most. It's also the thing that when you do look at alternative schools that allow and even encourage social interaction, they're the ones that have the most successful students coming out of their schools. And the thing that I always tie it to is that there was a study that was done by Sean Aker, one of the leaders of the positive psychology movement, a study that he did while he was at Harvard. And in this study, he was trying to identify what it is that he was trying to help Harvard students, really. He was trying to identify what does it take for them to succeed in life. And he did this very, very long study. About 1/5 of the entire school took the study. And he asked questions about everything, about, how often do they study, and, what do their parents do for a living, and where do they study, in the room or in the library, or, do they spend a lot of time interacting with study groups, or, do they book time with the professor, all the things that he could find to ask questions about. And the only thing he could find correlation on was how socially connected they were. And the social connection correlation was 7.70. So 70% correlation. In other words, that one factor alone is 70% accurate in predicting how much success that person is going to have later on in life. So that's why I believe learning to socialize early and often and how to build relationships is the most important thing you can learn in school.
Yes, yes. I am so in agreement with you. Thus, my book coming out called The Relationship Book, right?
Aha!
Yes, yes. But just this whole piece about we are social beings.
We are.
And I've always had this thing about one of the communication skills that if I could just be in charge of the world, that I would put in all early and middle education for all of us would be learning the communication skill of reflective listening. It's such a base one. It's when I hear you say something, I reflect it back, both the content of your thoughts and your feelings. And it doesn't have to mean I agree with you. But I'm letting you know I see you, I hear the content of what you're saying. And it's a step that is so often missed in terms of, it just gets in the way of people connecting, understanding each other, getting along, it's just very foundational. So I just would love that to be practiced.
I hear you. That's good. And I'm going to be interested in your comment on this one. I mentioned earlier a co-host who had been with me for about 6 years, Cindy Chavez, all about relationships. She's a relationships coach and so forth. And one of the things that she loves to point out is that relationships are so important because we have relationships with not just everyone, but everything in our lives. Literally, there is nothing in our lives with which we do not have a relationship.
Yes, yes. Love that. And including with ourselves.
Yes.
How we treat ourselves, what we say to ourselves all the time. All the things. Yeah. Oh, very, very resonant.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love that.
Yeah.
So
me too.
now I want to bring in Louis to get his take on this, in part because we were talking about socialization, and it's something you are a socializer. I made reference earlier to the fact that you like to tell us stories from the sauna because that's one of your favorite things to do is to go to the sauna and interact with people there. But that's sort of the indirect story there is that you're socializing, you're getting to know people, you're interacting with them, you're looking for ways you can help them and so forth. We haven't really talked a whole lot about we've talked about your early life and so forth. You've told many stories there, but you haven't really told us a whole lot about the socialization side. So I want to ask you a question I don't think I've asked you. How important do you think socialization really is? Whoops, you're muted there. Something wrong. What's going on? Why aren't we hearing you?
I would agree with Rachel very strongly when he says one of the biggest relationships is really between you and yourself. And a lot of people don't have a good relationship in that area. Therefore, they find it difficult to have relationships with others. So, you know what I'm talking about in the sauna most of the time is getting people to become more confident, more happy, have more fun in their lives, etc. So, slowly building other people, helping people if they want to become more confident in their own lives and to understand why they're here, where they're going, what they're doing, which are the prime questions, I ask and all the time. That clarity gives them great more strength. And so I would say socializing from somebody who was a nerd and couldn't socialize at all, just to who I am today, who can socialize pretty much with anybody, anywhere, anytime. It's very liberating. It's extremely liberating.
Yeah, I'm with you. Well, my own experience was similar in that sense because I was such the wallflower in school, and over time learned to come out of my shell and even started a podcast at one point. How about that? But anybody who has been anything down a route like that one has, I think, greater appreciation for socialization skills than, say, the extrovert has. The extrovert is just natural. It's just second nature to them. No big deal. But for the introvert, to develop socialization skills is a big deal. It's really big deal.
Yes.
But it is possible, I can tell you.
Oh, it is. We both did it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I'd be curious.
But there's a question I wanted to ask Rachel. I see you've got a question for me too, so we'll share questions. So When I looked at your about page, let me use the word that I actually was. I'll be really honest. I was annoyed. I wanted to know where you were born, where you're living, if you were married, you had kids, what made you who you were today. And I got nothing of that. And I was like, "Grr." I don't like it when I see an about page that tells me nothing about the person.
Is there a back page?
There is and there isn't.
Oh, okay. Cause I'm thinking, did I miss it? Okay, but I am happy to.
Back page. That's what you meant. Sorry. I thought you meant, do I have a past life or don't I?
Oh, wow. That's a whole other question.
It is a whole other question.
Yes,
but what did you mean by back page?
I think she meant an about
There is an
page.
about page. There is an about page. And that tells you
about
almost nothing about you.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
I wanted to ask, the thing that I'm really curious about and which I love in different kind of books is, person's spiritual journey, how they became who they are. That's what gets me going. Yeah.
Oh, great whole bubbling there. And so thank you for all of the annoyance because it brought I welcome it and it aggravates the questions and the curiosity to come forward and invites my heart to share more. So thank you. And, so let's see where to start in that. I live in St. Paul, Minnesota in the U.S., and I live with my husband of 33 years. And we have two sons who are 26 and almost 24. And we have two giant tortoises.
Ooh.
And they're more of my husband's thing, but they're amazing. I'm amazed at them. They're Aldabra tortoises, the second largest to only the Galapagos. So it's kind of a whole thing.
Yeah.
And
heavy to pick up, I know.
Yes. No, we have to have contraptions and ways to
Is it
all that.
heavy?
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're very heavy. Spirituality, I would say that I'm a conglomeration of, my mom is Jewish. And so in the Jewish tradition, when your mom is a Jew, you're a Jew. Mm-hmm. It's just the deal. And then my dad, Christian.
Are you still a Jew?
I just consider myself that in an identity way, but I don't, practice. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I have this inherent love for the Jewish people. I just sort of grew up with that with my mom and just feel this affinity. My dad just grew up in the mountains and nature and all this stuff. But I think more than anything, some of that has made me just sensitive to being very inclusive about where anyone is coming from, including if they don't have faith or an acclaimed spirituality. And I think more than anything also, I just consider myself more of a mystic, that use of imagination and knowing there's more than what I can see. That even the miracle of connection, that what does that look like in the physical world? Even right now, we are all talking and there's people listening to this conversation. Mm-hmm. And what are these almost miraculous connections? People who are listening right now I can't see you. And, you may or may not be seeing me right now if you're on audio. And isn't it a miracle that we're connected in the unseen world? And to me, that's spiritual, this amazing connective love piece. And, so for me, it's about holding almost a childlike sense of wonder in the world, of believing a lot of things I can't see as well as what I can see. Something about those things. That is just a whole unprepared blurt.
That's great. I have a much better idea now. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you for asking.
Have you had many mystic experiences?
I would say yes. And then I want to ask everyone who's listening, but they can't speak on here. And I'm curious to ask each of you the same thing. But for me, They tend to happen, not always. Yes, they do. They tend to happen in relationship. And so whether it's, having a conversation with somebody from afar, like we're just going about our own business, and a couple of days later, someone says, I heard this from you, or I say to them, I was hearing this from you, and they were saying, yes, I was talking to you at that moment, or, things like that. But that's the miraculous connection piece, right? I would say sometimes seeing something that's not necessarily there of light or of a presence or, boy, this is something I'd have to sort of be quiet with, or in conversation as you guys talk, maybe there's things that I'd be like, oh my gosh, yes, yes, yes. How about each of you? And no pressure to answer in a way that I answer, or if there's anything you want to say.
Do you want to go first?
No, you can go first.
All right. Well, I'll start by saying I'm not really clear in my mind, and that this has nothing to do with your question. This is just, this has been true for me for a long time. I'm not really clear in my mind what mystic means.
Oh.
I mean, there are lots of different definitions that I've heard people apply to it. It's such a broad term. I guess you could hang almost any hat on it. But if I'll kind of turn it to spiritual, just because that's a little bit easier for me to grasp than mystic is.
Great.
Have I had spiritual experiences? Oh yeah, tons of them. A large part of the whole spiritual experience for me is learning to deal with the fact that I had spiritual experiences. Just dealing with the shock of it sometimes.
Yes.
And some of them have been really.
You have to go to a psychologist. Well,
I guess apparently, yeah. Well, maybe Rachel will help me out with this. I mean, I don't really know, but no, it's true. I mean, since doing this show, obviously, I've had a lot of guests on the show who have not only experienced all kinds of interesting stuff, but have shared with us, here different ways to understand and appreciate, and even experience those experiences yourself, and in the way that you would experience them. And that's all great. That's fun. That's interesting. But when I just look at my own experience, my own stuff that has happened, and when Louis goes, he's going to dwarf what I'm saying here. But for my own experiences, it's little things that happen, and I say to myself, "What was that? What just happened? What was that?" Like for instance, I remember one time I was asleep at night. My wife and I were in bed. We're asleep, probably 2:00 in the morning, something like that. And all of a sudden, while I was asleep, I had this feeling of a face come in really, really, really close to me, like inches away from my nose, and in a loud voice say, "Hello." I said, "What the hell is that?"
Yes.
I that my wife said, "What are you talking about?"
Have some more meds, Well.
Yeah, right.
Yes. I'm going to say this briefly just to join with you, also in case any listeners are, this is resonating, or I woke up from sleep last week or something, and I heard a man singing to me, and it's a song I've never heard, for just a moment. And I had other things I was remembering as I was hearing you talk, whether it's seeing a loved one who's passed in a dream and it feels very vibrant and real, and, so many things. Yeah.
Actually, that was part of the conversation. Who was it? Well, Louise and I were trying to figure out what was this all about.
Who was that voice?
Apparently it was somebody who knew me well enough to say hello.
Right. Who recognized you.
It must be somebody who's non-physical, so probably somebody I knew who passed on, maybe a relative, something like that. Never really had a clear idea. I did have one idea that came into my head, and I've never been able to verify one way or another, but I have an uncle who passed fairly young. He was in his 50s when he passed in the early 1980s, and for some reason I thought of him shortly after the event, so I'm thinking that's probably my best bet. But I don't really know. I have no idea for sure. I mean, I have some idea. Obviously, I made one reference just now, but really, I don't have any idea. I don't know who it was.
Yeah, isn't that? And we just live in the mystery of that, and maybe in the knowing, but some tension between the knowing and the unknown.
Now, I've also had other experiences that were less shocking than that. One of the ones that comes to my mind immediately is my father passed in 2008, March 2008, and in April 2008. When he passed, I won't go into the whole story, but very briefly, when he passed, I had the interesting experience of doing the mourning before he died. And after he died, I was shocked, like, why am I not mourning? There's something wrong here. And then I realized I'd been mourning his passing just before he left. So I felt pretty much at peace with the whole thing, except that I knew I wasn't going to be able to talk with him again. I said, oh, geez, I would really like to have another conversation with him. And within a month, I have this, again, a sleep experience, very, very real. I'll call it a dream for lack of a better term, where I got to spend 45 minutes to an hour just talking with him and hugging him and just interacting with him. It felt very real. It felt more real than much of my waking reality is. It was just very, very strong. Didn't feel like a dream at all. Yeah. You know, dreams are very kind of ethereal and distant and all that. No, this was like, oh, this was in your face real. It was that strong. So, but there wasn't so much shock associated with that. It was more, just the impact of it, you know, the strength of it. That was the part that I noticed the most of it.
What a gift.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I loved it.
Yeah. And I'm with you about that. There's dreams, but then there's these, it feels like liminal experiences, like you're not quite here and not quite there.
Yeah. Well, Louis is an expert at these. I mean, he's like an astral traveler, and I mean, he's had some of them. I'll let you talk, Louis. You know this stuff.
Louis, all right.
Well, going to my father, it was quite interesting because I had this really, really strong experience because he was sick and old and all the rest of it, and he was in hospital at the time, and I had this strong impression to phone my sister immediately and say to her, I really want to speak to Dad, video conference me into him, really want to. So she video conferenced herself and said, Dad's in a really bad way and he doesn't recognize anybody and everything. And I said, just put me on. So she put me on, and my dad saw my face on the screen, and he immediately said, hey, King Louis, which is the fun name I used to call myself. And it was so amazing that my dad actually, first of all, recognized me, plus also remembered that name, which drew a strong connection between him and I. I've always had a strong connection to my dad. A couple of days later, he passed away, and that was also beautiful. It's another story. But my sister put on some of my mom's favorite music for my dad, and in the afternoon, and he lay down and just passed away. And it was just very beautiful. But from a mystic perspective, if you listen to my podcasts, I've had many, many different varied experiences, which you could call this or that. I don't really like giving them names. I like to say, this is what happened to me. You make your decision what category you want to put it in. That's a little more recent thing, that wanting to let everybody decide where it fits into what they think about it. But yeah, as Walt says, I've had out-of-body experiences, if you want to call them that. I can just tell you the stories, and then you can make your own decision of what you think they were. I've had evil spirits sit on my chest and freeze my whole body when I woke up, and I got rid of them with calling on spirit to blow them away, and then I got too scared of the spirit, and just the stories go on and on and on and on. On numerous different reasons, but the main reason I think I've had all these experiences from the age of 8, that's the story I've told many, many, many times, is I said to my mom very seriously, I said, what is truth, love, and God really about? And she said, And I knew I had to find out for myself. So it's been a long journey from 8 years old to 55 years old, and which has led me down some most incredible, fascinating paths and experiences. So, yeah.
It's beautiful. Now, your background on the screen for you, Louis, there might be something else behind your head, but for what I can see, there's 3.
Buddha.
Oh, it's Buddha, the hidden Buddha. Okay, we're on to you. But there's 2 candles and a decanter or something, maybe. I'm not sure what that is.
Not
the
sure
third
either.
thing. But when you said you asked, because there's 3 objects I can see in the screen, when you said that you asked what is truth, love, and God, is that those are 3? I saw those as the 3 things in the background.
All right.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. And Buddha. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
appropriately, Louis is sitting in front of the Buddha, which is why we didn't see it. So, and I say that's appropriate because he's kind of like the Buddha here on
He's
on
kind
the
of
show.
taking the place
Just a
of.
little bit, yeah.
Yes.
He might not accept the nomination, but he really
Who wants to rub my stomach?
The laughing Buddha. Yes.
Thank you, Sherry.
That's
We're having
so
fun
good.
too. It's just one of our online people. It's a lovely conversation we're having.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, Sherry. And hello,
Hi,
Adi.
Sherry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
I also, can I share one more of these dream things?
No, sorry.
Dad?
No.
There is no such thing as permission on the show. You just go.
Okay, just blurt. Okay, I want to share too then a dream I had about my dad after he died. He came to me and it was clear to me in the dream, I knew he had died and I couldn't touch him, but I could tell he was just on the other side, however we would describe side, I don't know. But we were able to come super, super close, within inches to one another, facing one another. And he was able to show me what he looked like now. And he looked youthful. I have never seen skin look so incredibly beautiful. It was just
radiant.
Just radiant. It was radiant and even healthier than a baby's skin, you know. It's just so he is so well and fine. And his eyes were also radiant. Like I could see his eyes vibrantly. I could see into them. I could see the color. I could see, it just was all vivid, and close. And I mean, the point was, oh my gosh, we're still connected. Look at how well he is, and kind of look at what happens. And I was able to see that. And I don't think we talked much in the dream. It was just this being with one another and witnessing from the 2 sides. And I couldn't touch him or bridge over because I'm alive. So there was a barrier, and yet there wasn't, in being able to be with him and see him. So that was an incredible gift. That I was
the
able
other
to,
thing for me, Rachel, was my dad actually died on my birthday.
Okay, yes, say more.
Well, it was interesting. He loved sunsets, and there was an incredible sunset on that day. It was absolutely amazing. And the next year, there was also an incredible sunset, not the year after, which was interesting. But you know, it really makes me think a lot about my dad, because it's my birthday now, so no, he died on that day. So, you know, you kind of think there's a reason for that. It's not completely random at all.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah. That's where it lands for me too. Right. There's all this meaning. And I think that's part of the whole thing of there's more sometimes than we can see going on, right? There's meaning. There's, deep connection to tap into. And there is much that's meant to help us, right? To help us, accompany us, guide us, cheer us on. And what might seem like, oh, bad news, died on your birthday. Like maybe that's the best thing. What if it's the best thing?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
to me,
right?
it's definitely not the worst.
Yes.
You know, I think out of all children, I think I had the closest relationship to my dad. And yeah, I remember telling him one day I loved him, and I, you know, because of our family and the way we brought up, this just wasn't really said. But I think it made a profound impression on him as well.
That's right.
But
yeah.
the thing that a little story I wanted to tell was about your major interest, which is relationships. So I was going on this training course, and there were people in this business that had done very, very well, and they came up stage, but they were Eastern Europeans, and the guy that was running it was an American. So the guy got him stage. He said, "What's your secret?" He said, "This business is all about Russian ships." He says, "Russian ships?" "Yes, this business is all about Russian ships." And then he's like looking at the audience, frowning, and somebody shouted out from the audience, "Relationships."
Oh, hilarious.
From that point onwards,
Russian
the big thing
ships.
about the business is relationships. Is Russian ships.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yes, indeed.
But,
You raised a question in my mind. I need to go back to it for a second because you talked about how your father passed on your birthday. My paternal grandmother passed on my birthday, on my 8th birthday.
Look at that.
And it was a question I was never able to resolve. Now you got me re-asking the question for the first time in 50 years. Why did she die on my birthday? And I don't know the answer. I don't have any clue.
Did you have a close-ish relationship to her?
Not only did I not have a closest relationship with her, although she did her last year or so, she lived in our home, but I didn't want to.
Okay.
She was I don't know what she was like earlier on in her life, but toward the end of her life, when I knew her, she had kind of a tart edge to her, and I never saw her smile. I never saw her say something that was fun and lively. It was all, grim. Everything that came out of her was grim. So that's why I didn't want to have a relationship with her. But she died on my birthday. She died at around 12 noon, actually, on my birthday. And I always wondered about that. Like, what's going on here? What is this about? Well, of course, I was 8 years old at the time. I just turned 8. So really the first question is, why did you have to ruin my birthday?
But you didn't like her that much. Maybe it was a birthday gift.
I didn't dislike her. I just didn't like her.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I didn't want to be close to her.
Sometimes I don't know if this will resonate as something you would want to do, but I've been talking to a few different people lately about either asking a deep question like that and then getting a notepad out and either asking your guides to just work through your pen and just write to you, however you want to think about it, through my imagination, through my creative writing, or do you think of them as actual guides? And I think in any of those, my muse, I'm going to write to my muse with this question and just be with my breathing for a few minutes before and just get grounded and centered, and then just see what comes through your pen on that page. And that
the journaling process is very powerful. There's no doubt.
Yeah. So if it's a question you really, truly do want to walk with, or there's a practice I also heard about it's sort of a mystical practice, but where you have your question and you go on a walk, and you kind of hold your question in your hand and you see what signs and symbols and responses you get to your question along your walk. And so there's a piece here. I'm sort of being the playgroundist again, right? So this is coming through the vessel of Rachel Oz, but there's, playing with your questions, or, the poet Rilke had talked about living the questions, that if we don't know the answers yet, how do we live our questions? How do we be with them? How do we coexist with them? How do we have them as a companion near us and live them? And relationally, maybe it's also sharing our questions with those who we're close to, who are meaningful to us, and seeing the wonderful conversation our curiosities and our unknowns can bring in connection with one another as well.
And in my case, that would be a challenge because the people I'd want to have that conversation with are also passed on. So, yeah.
Yes. Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. The one good thing, I don't know if it's a good thing. Well, yeah, that's true. But I can say this part, and that is, it's not a question that has haunted me.
the only reason I
Yeah.
thought about it
It's
is
a
because Louis mentioned it.
curiosity.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
curiosity. Louis mentioned
Yeah.
that his father passed on his birthday. Oh, my grandmother passed on my birthday. I hadn't thought of that in a while. It was that
Mhm.
level of curiosity. It wasn't
Yeah.
really huge. I
It was
suspect if it
lighter.
was strong enough, I probably would have found an answer by now.
Right.
Because
Yeah. It's
I mean,
curious.
when you're on the kind of journey that we're on, when you do a show like this one, or when you have guests on like yourself or co-hosts like Louis, you kind of start exploring a lot of modalities, and the ones that you explore personally, you're almost always attaching them in some way to something that's an important question to answer, or something that it's an important subject in some way.
Right.
So the fact that this hasn't come up previously tells me, well, that reinforces it really wasn't all that important a subject.
Yeah.
It was a curiosity more than anything.
Yes. And you know what I also get curious about? Well, and I believe, of course for you, it wasn't a heavy thing at all that's been with you. It was Louis bringing it up.
Yeah.
So it just brought it up in your memory.
Association.
And what I get curious about is we have all these people listening, and I wonder if for any of these ideas might be helpful to them, that our conversation is like intersecting with them, and our ideas and our playfulness and our invitations and freedom to just be open about all these. Like, I just am curious for the people listening, like, what are the things
we may
speaking
never
to
even
you?
know, but
And we
I
may
do know
never know.
No, we may not. But I do
Yeah.
know this from enough experiences where, members of the listening audience have written in or asked for help or whatever.
Yeah.
That does happen all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Almost
I love
every
that.
time, any issue that ever comes up, any topic that ever comes up, there's always at least one or more listeners who need to hear that particular thing at that particular time. Even if it's something we're just doing kind of comically, they still need to hear it.
Exactly. So I'm trusting that along with you guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've seen it over and over.
In the sauna, I've had that experience. You often got this feeling, ooh, I wonder what they're thinking about the conversation, or, the third person or the fourth person. I often call them just the third person. And, and quite often it's happened to me, that somebody comes and comments, but one lady the other day came past, put her hands together and bowed to me and said, thanks for your wisdom, and walked out. And, she wasn't part of the conversation at all in any shape or form. She was just listening.
Just listening. Yeah. The power of listening.
Yeah.
Yes. And the power of thinking, saying thank you. By the way, my first book was called All I Did Was Listen. I love
Nice title.
Oh,
I
thank
like
you.
that title. That's a great title.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think the power of listening is so underrated today.
Yeah, it is. It's
the power of what?
Listening.
There you go. You got me.
Me too, Louis. Oh my gosh. In fact, speaking of possible book titles, and not everyone wants to write a book, but surprisingly, a lot of people dream of it. And Louis, as you were talking about these sauna experiences, even though I'm just getting to know you in these very few minutes here wonderfully, as I was thinking, oh my gosh, have you thought about writing a book about, conversations in the sauna?
Dialogues in the sauna. I've already got it titled.
Yes, dialogues in the sauna. Yeah, sauna logs.
Yeah, that's what I'm using the podcast for mostly, is to bring out all my sauna stories.
Yes.
And Walt's heard a lot of them.
Yes.
And enjoyed all of them.
Oh my goodness. There is something, I think, too, again, we're speaking to what's outside of us, right? Like, well, you were talking about so much focus, which of course I'm all about as well, our inner focus, the power of that, the potential joy in that, the reparativeness in our inner focus. But the outer focus, our environment, like my husband's an architect, right? He pays a lot of attention to the outer shell of our existence. And I think there is something that's very facilitative of our inner dialogue in our relationship with ourselves, with our own growth, about how we care for what our environment is, the buildings we're in. And I think those also help facilitate conversations, so that the sauna can feel like such a safe place, hopefully, maybe optimally, as a place for conversation. A tree house, right? Might feel that, like, where are the spaces a podcast. But like, where are the spaces that also help facilitate, and how do we also even decorate them so that they communicate it's safe here? This is a place a campfire is probably another space where we feel really invited to be connective and to share deep things. But I just got curious.
One of the ways that I think that we do exactly that is through our emotions. Because anytime that we're expressing and interacting with somebody else, the emotions are coming into the conversation in one form or another. And I think that's probably the strongest way that we create that space that you're talking about, that we color it, that we put the background in and so forth, because the emotions are the way that we express that subtext. It's not actually part of what we're saying directly. Well. Yeah, I know you never did, but
I missed that, Louis. What did you say?
I don't have any emotions. You get people who say that, by the way. You do actually get people who say that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't feel anything. I don't have any emotions.
Yeah.
But those emotions, they literally paint everything. They tell us, I mean, I include body language and emotions. Some people separate those. I actually think the two go together.
Yeah.
Because I think body language is probably one of the best ways of expressing emotion that we have.
Yeah. And for cultures where emotions are not accepted or acknowledged too much, people in those cultures tend to express their emotions about more in lieu of body pain. My stomach hurts. I've got a headache, that kind of thing, because that's more acceptable to say. And of course, our bodies don't lie, right? They tell our whole story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's definitely
the Louise Hay book. Right now, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Rachel, I was thinking of what you were saying in connection with your husband really being focused on the outer form. And you probably maybe consider yourself focused more on the inner form.
Yeah.
And that making a good relationship. Now, it's very similar to my wife and I. She's very good on the outer and balanced and, grounded and all the rest of it. And I'm way out there, with the fairies and,
fairies.
So, the point I'm really trying to make is that I've come to realize that contrast is your teacher.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's a book title too.
It is.
Yes. Contrast is your teacher. Oh, that could be a whole conversation, couldn't it, you all?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It often is around here.
Is it?
I'm not kidding. It really often is. Yeah.
Really? Oh my goodness.
Well, if you think about it for a second, when I was young, I knew there was a great truth, a massive truth, an absolute pinnacle one, that if there was no light, there'd be no darkness. If there's no mountain, there'd be no valley. If there was no up, there'd be no down, etc. I knew there's a great truth in there, but I didn't know how it applied to a human. I was completely flawed. And then Abraham Hicks taught me what it was. When you know what you don't want, you have a better idea what you do want. It's like, that's how it works in a human.
Contrast is your teacher.
And any good teacher, master, guru, mentor, etc., will bring contrast in the student.
Oh my goodness. And it's even as kids, we start with, I don't like that with food.
Exactly.
Right? Or all the things.
Contrast.
All the things. That's right. And it's an interesting terminology because you're not saying conflict. That's a little different.
Right.
It's not that conflict is, it's a very...
Conflict is part of contrast and it can be used as contrast.
Right. Sure. And there can be tension in contrast. And things, I don't know a lot about physics, but I'm guessing that a lot can be formed with contrast in the physical world even. That things...
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the essence of space-time reality.
Yes. Can you speak to that? Because I love how the physical world, one sort of parallels the other or mirrors it, or like, there's worlds in a snowflake image, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. I think probably the biggest part of it, from my perspective, is just being willing to recognize that it's there. I went through a large portion of my life where I paid no attention to contrast in that sense, and dismissed it and considered it to be a minor consideration. And it was only in the last 10 years or so, really since I've been doing this podcast, that my view of that changed. And I began to realize just how powerful contrast really is, just how powerful polarity is. And to come to appreciate as well that as much as I had trouble accepting this at first, I deliberately came into a world of contrast. It was a selection that I made before I even got here. And that we all make that same kind of selection. We knew in advance the way I like to express it often is, what on earth was I thinking? But the fact is, in my viewpoint, we actually did know what we were getting into. And we came knowing that. I still ask myself that same question, but nevertheless, I can't escape the fact I really do believe that is what happened. We all make that decision.
Yes. So how does contrast and what we need to learn relate to happiness, to come back to your subtitle or tagline?
There are a lot of ways I think you could answer that question. I mean, that's another one we could do an entire show on. I'll give my one brief answer is the greatest value that contrast brings to the topic of happiness is if you can come to appreciate all of the contrasts you have come to the point where you can be happiest. Because what makes us unhappy is usually where there's some part of the contrast that we disapprove of or we dislike and we don't want to make it to do with and we resist it and all that. And that's where we get unhappy.
But you would never know what happiness was unless you were unhappy. And that
contrast
really needs to be clear. If you were in happiness all the time, you would not be able to see it for what it is.
Yeah. Can you say that again, Louis? I think that's important. Yeah.
If you always lived in happiness, you would not know it was happiness. You'd be clueless. Absolutely clueless. Because you've got contrast shows you what is and what isn't. Without contrast, there's nothing.
Right. Wow.
There's absolutely nothing.
Yes.
This show does get esoteric at times, I have to say.
Okay, so I'm going to say a thing in this same light and spirit about one of the things, now I'm circling back to color, that did you all ever do this when you were young, or maybe you've done it as an adult, I don't know, with Crayola crayons, where I would take a square and I fill in every inch of the square with different colors from the crayons. So it's all covered in different colors. Then I take the black crayon and I cover every square over all the colors. And then I take a toothpick or something and I draw something so that the colors start to come through the black. And that was an exercise in contrast of seeing this sort of the stimulating joy of seeing the colors come through the black, through the contrast, and appreciating it allowed me to even enjoy and appreciate the colors. So of course, through me, I'm thinking about also contrast with dark and light and color and all of that. Yeah.
You took me back about 60 years or so. I didn't actually do that, but I remember kids that I grew up who did do that. People in the neighborhood did that.
I played with crayons endlessly.
Yes.
I actually started drawing, and I've got one very good drawing that I did of a flower. It's probably the only real drawing I've done besides trees since then.
Great choice.
But it was all with oil pastels, which is even more difficult to do anything with. Yeah.
Yes.
Very cool. This has been a fun conversation. It's kind of sad that we're kind of nearing the end here. There's a couple things we got to do though before we part company with you. First and foremost, you got the book coming out, right? The relationship book is the short title. What's the long title again?
A soulful, transformational, and artistic inventory of your connective life.
Okay, so there we go. And that's coming out in November. I imagine it's going to be available in all the usual suspects, Amazons and all that kind of thing.
It'll be available I have an online shop also, and it'll be available for pre-sale October 3rd. And my online shop you can find easily by going to my website, which is just my name, racheloz.com. And, on the header on the top, you can click on shop or blog or whatever you want. So, and it's RACHELAWES.com.
All right. And we'll make sure we include that in the show notes to make it easy for people to get
yes,
there.
Yes.
Then they can click on the store part so they can go find the book.
Okay, great.
So that's good. Second question is, I presume that's the best way to reach out to you personally as well?
Yeah, my website has a contact spot,
Okay.
Where you can find me, and you can also just Google my name with Instagram or Facebook or anything like that and find me too. I also have a YouTube channel.
Ooh, okay.
That you could, I'm sure, Google as well.
All right, good.
Yeah.
So those are the two key pieces I wanted to get. Then there's a third thing that I want to bring in here, which I'm making this a point lately to do, and I'm really glad I'm doing this because I think this is like a permanent new addition to the program. But you mentioned earlier, you made reference earlier to people who are listeners perhaps, or people that we're not seeing, we're not interacting with directly, but they're being influenced. And I think that's true for everybody who's been on the show, the people who are broadly speaking, in the line of work we're all in, where we're reaching out, trying to provide help and education and information and entertainment, for people everywhere. And as a result, there are many, many people whom you have never met and whom you have never seen and you never will meet and you never will see, who you are influencing and touching and helping with things that you say on podcasts or things that you write in your book or on your website and whatever. And on their behalf, I want to thank you for what you're doing for them. Because first of all, that's something we don't get appreciation for, and we should. And second of all, they matter. They all matter. And what you're doing matters too. So on their behalf, thank you for what you do.
And I just want to echo and say it as well, that all the people listening matter deeply and sincerely. And we don't always grow up with that message, but it doesn't mean it's not supremely true.
Yes. Totally agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It also matters to have great co-hosts, and Louie, I appreciate you too. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, both of you have been amazing.
I wouldn't be here without you, Walt. I love your questions and the clarity that you have with all the people that you deal with over time. It's incredible. Really is great.
I appreciate that as much as well, and thank you very much. That's the other thing we have to learn to do. We have to learn to receive. So I received that. Thank you very much. So much appreciate that. And also, I want to thank the podcast listeners themselves, because without you guys, first of all, we wouldn't have a podcast. And boy, is it fun to talk to you guys. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.